Okay, welcome back everyone from break. I hope you all returned. Um, let's start. Click away all of these things. Great. So, what was presented by Denise in the beginning, our department does quite a lot of work in SPARQL endpoints, in RDF, and also in our group, BigCat, Department of Bioinformatics, also runs quite some SPARQL endpoints. And this is an overview figure of the various SPARQL endpoints that we are managing, maintaining, renewing the data, and just keeping alive for the public use. All loaded with SPARQL, with RDF data, and freely accessible for everyone, except from the Safe by Design for Nano, which Shafiana will talk about tomorrow. So generally, our group is most well known, I guess, for running the Wiki Pathways SPARQL endpoint. But also in the recent years, we have started deploying services for the AOP Wiki, for which RDF is created, for Campbell, like was mentioned by Denise, Nano Safety RDF, which is new, and you probably haven't heard of yet, the AOP Database RDF, which is an extension of the AOP Wiki RDF, which was a collaboration in OpenRiskNet project that ended some time ago, and the Safe by Design for Nano Landscape RDF. So to start off with the main one, Wiki Pathways. Wiki Pathways is a molecular pathway database, and also it's very strongly community driven, with various types of applications. So the various communities you can see in this figure is a simple abstract graph, I guess, of various communities contributing to this Wiki Pathways database. And on the other side of it, there's a lot of ways that people can interact and use the content that is stored in this database, through coding environments, through APIs, through SPARQL endpoints, as expected, but also many tools and application and plugins, for example, in Cytoscape. Also, the RDF was created in 2016. It was published by Andra, who doesn't work in our group anymore. But this is a very, very simple figure of how the basic RDF is standing, where a central concept is the pathway, of course, and the second one that is most commonly varied and used and interesting to look at is the data node. This is a small figure. You will see this also later in the hands-on. I won't go into detail. Basically, everything is defined as what they are with this within this tree of information. But also the the Wiki Pathways RDF contains two custom vocabularies: the Wiki Pathways vocabulary and the GPML vocabulary. It contains RigiDB mappings for chemicals, for proteins, for genes, to have link codes to basically all frequently used databases, molecular databases. Also, it includes references, literature references, authors, and ontology annotations, both for grouping pathways into particular sections, particular subgroups, but also, for example, which cell type is involved, or in which cell type is this pathway involved. So this is an example of the various interfaces that we have. I will show it for Wiki Pathways, and I will go in detail. For all the other ones, it's basically a spin-off of this one that you see right here. Basically an adaptation of the basic framework. So this SPARQL endpoint, you can access it. You see the link in the top right. I will put it in all of the SPARQL endpoints that we see in this presentation. Basically, it starts with a central entry point where you can write your query. There is a panel that is loaded with the SPARQL highlighting syntax. So if you write a SPARQL query in there, it will automatically make the coloring and make the marks for things that are relevant for describing and writing SPARQL queries. Just an example here is written in the in the main box. Next, on the right side, you see a lot of options. This is called the SPARQL Query Examples panel, or SPARQL Examples. This is an automatically loaded interface that takes information from custom GitHub repositories, which is also interchangeable, which is in the very first bit of this interface, this right panel. And you can change this. So if you have your own project, you can actually make an own GitHub repository to load queries that you want yourself into this interface. So this looks like this. We have just a simple GitHub repository with folders and structures, which are all basically copied into the interface that you see on the right. You can select, you can browse, and you can also search for SPARQL queries. Moreover, the interface allows various exports of information, various formats, a full screen mode if you want to go really hard on SPARQL queries, and a permalink that allows you to share easily between people, but also have the SPARQL query reused in many ways. It's just keeps safe that you can share it easily instead of copying and pasting the whole SPARQL query. My throat is really terrible. Okay. Next is the AOP Wiki, which was developed a few years ago in the projects of EU Risk and OpenRiskNet. And basically, what is the AOP Wiki? It is a database, a knowledge base that stores adverse outcome pathways. That's what AOP stands for. An adverse outcome pathway is a framework that captures mechanistic knowledge in a sequence of biological events to support decision-making and risk assessment. So this is maybe not only applicable to nanomaterials, but is also for chemicals and other kind of stressors that can possibly initiate a cascade of these events. It's part of the bigger adverse outcome pathway knowledge base, which also includes the AOP database and Factopedia. These are other tools to interact with adverse outcome pathway knowledge. And it's been co-developed by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission and the US EPA. What is in the RDF? Well, it contains basically everything that is in the live version of the AOP Wiki, which you can also publicly access. It's an open wiki where everyone can contribute. But also we extended this with molecular descriptors mostly. So these are molecular descriptors for chemicals, where from the starting CAS identifiers that is in the database, we add link outs to many other databases. And the same for genes and proteins that are part of biological objects, which are kind of an ontology annotation per key event on the key event level, which is one of these small building blocks that created the AOP. And based on text mapping, not text mining, but text mapping of HGNC identifiers for human relevant genes, or human gene symbols, at least. All contents have resolvable identifiers. Everything is through identifiers.org. And all ontology annotations have been completed, and they all work now with the correct IRIs. So this is a very simplified figure of the AOP Wiki RDF. Again, you can look at this in more detail in the hands-on sessions. Basically, the RDF describes in a lot of detail all of the predicates and all of the triples that exist in this database. And the ones that are here are just the very, very basic ones. Do not make the scheme too large because it will not fit on the screen. But generally it exists like this, where you have the central core, which is the adverse outcome pathway, which is an assembly of the key events and key event relationships and the stressors. And then with the stressors, we went 2 more levels to go into the actual chemicals that are part of these stressors, because often The stressors that are described are chemicals, not always, but often. And these are further mapped to these other chemical databases. For example, the CABI ID, one of the, I think, 7 or 8 different chemical identifiers. This is an example of one of the tables. This is the adverse outcome pathway triple table, which I don't go in detail, but because it takes too long. But that gives you an idea how elaborate these RDF schemas can be. And this is the interface. It works exactly the same as the Wiki Pathways interface, only with different colors and also a different custom SPARQL query panel, as I mentioned before. These are all different ones. Next is the AOP database. The AOP database was developed by the US EPA, and it's a decision support tool for risk assessments. Again, very similar to the AOP wiki, but this one combines more types of information and is more structured in its information by combining genes and chemicals, diseases and pathways, but also toxcast assays through the ToxCom dashboard. This AOP database, it won the Open ResNet implementation challenge, and that's why this was converted into RDF with our group in Maastricht together with the US EPA. And now we are running the SPARQL endpoint. This is a figure of the RDF. Again, this is basically an extension of what we had in the AOP wiki, so it's not containing the adverse outcome pathway structure itself, only the components that come directly from the AOP database and the efforts that were ongoing in there to link data and combine data sources together. The SPARQL endpoint for AOP database is a bit simpler. This is basically the background that is used in all of our SPARQL endpoints, the Virtuoso, OpenLink Virtuoso SPARQL endpoint. Also, I didn't mention this before, but this is all simple Docker image setups, Docker container setups, where this one is just a Virtuoso image and the other ones are together with an Apache server Docker image. Then the next one, NanoSafety, the NanoSafety RDF. This is basically an effort that we did over the last year where papers from a literature review were checked again, and the data that was in there about different nanomaterials, about their effects, about our physical chemical properties were collected in a big spreadsheet that was converted into RDF and make it available. Following the template that is also used in other projects which we are involved in. And it uses basically the basic semantic web approaches to report these RDF and make it accessible to everyone. This is the schema that is used for the NanoSafety RDF. In total, there is 83 unique nanomaterials stored in this data set, of which there are 34 different types, unique types. These are annotated with various ontologies, mostly the e-nanomapper ontology, but also the CABI and the nanoparticle ontology. And these are also linked to molecular initiating events, which are from the AOP wiki again. So this is all interlinked directly, of which there are 9 unique molecular initiating events that are, according to the literature sources that we investigated, are linked to these nanomaterials. And this is the interface. I'm not going to explain again. This is the same interface, but again with a different kind of color scheme and different layout. Next SPARQL endpoint is the Campbell. The Campbell mirror is also called. Was described by Denise in the beginning as well. So Campbell is a curated database for bioactive molecules with drug-like properties, and they bring together chemical bioactivity and genomic data. And it's for yeah, translation to get this information for drug repurposing, but also investigating new drugs for various uh, treatments or diseases. The Campbell RDF does exist. It's not created by us, but it's produced by the EBI themselves, who allow it for download, but they don't host anymore a SPARQL endpoint. And that's where our group, Amar specifically, set up a Campbell mirror SPARQL endpoint. This is the simple layout of the RDF, where the core component, of course, is the substance, which is the chemical, which can have various activities or mechanisms. They can have also, of course, their source is described, so where they are coming from. So Campbell has many publications that are included, but also it links to the different assays that are being described in these papers, which of course have some context, some cell type that they test, or some target gene or protein that they link to. And this is all reported as well in this RDF. We can look in more detail at that in the hands-on session again. And this is again the interface. I don't know how I'm doing on time, by the way, but okay. This is the last one. So the Safe by Design for Nano landscape, this is related to the Safe by Design for Nano project, as the name indicates. Tomorrow, Geoffrey will present this in much more detail than I, so I will go over this shortly again. So it basically, the Safe by Design for Nano landscape is a semantic annotation of data sources. This sounds very vague, but it's a collection of many, many tools, services, databases, models, you can name it, together captured in one SPARQL endpoint. Basically, shape expressions, which are the checks that were also mentioned before, are used to basically validate and test and see if a particular structure of the RDF is met. And this is also the goal, that these shape expressions can be shared between projects, where the various efforts, for example, this is an inventarization of sources. If that is done in other projects, it will be done in a similar way, in the same kind of structure that this one has. And since all of the information in this data source is separated in various data sets, in various RDF data sets, it's very flexible to disseminate, to share, because every single repository basically has their own license to it. Some tools and some data sets are very public, you can share them without issue. Other ones are more closed or restricted, which makes it easy to, well, the separation makes it easy to share this in the correct way. Again, the SPARQL endpoint, the snorkel interface that you see here, is the same with the same layout. On the right side, you see more detail on the different data sets that are actually in there. So it also includes some of the AOP Wiki work, also some of the NanoSolvit tools, the NanoMapper data, but also NanoCommons, among other data sets that come from the project itself. What is slightly different. So this is the RDF. Well, this is basically the landscape. Sorry, there's a loud sound outside. This is basically the landscape of the Safe by Design for Nano, where the SPARQL queries are used to create kind of a book, which you see in the top right, which is an explanation, which is basically the kind of a GitHub page that uses SPARQL queries to populate the pages with information. Also, there's the development of an API using Garlic, which is a tool that can create a REST API based on SPARQL queries directly interacting with the SPARQL endpoints. And summarizing the content that's inside of the Safe by Design for Nano landscape, there's a lot of different types of information in there, and of course there's a lot of work still ongoing. This project only started recently, And tomorrow, Jafiana will talk all about that. But there's a lot of more things that will be added in the very near future, from adverse outcome pathways, but also from different predictive modelings or QSAR models, from these various projects that we are involved in. So this is the presentation to prepare for the hands-on. Thank you all for listening.